What if you're the king of your life, but you're playing like a pawn? Every day, you're on a chessboard, reacting to pressures, chasing approval, or dodging fears, moving without strategy, without purpose. Carl Jung's wisdom about the king archetype reveals a powerful truth. You're not just a piece in the game, you're the center of it. But to claim that power, you need to know who you are and what you're fighting for. In this video, we'll dive into Carl Jung's psychology of the king to show you how to think with clarity, lead with purpose, and protect what truly matters. From the chaos of modern life to the quiet strength of your inner throne, we'll uncover practical steps to live like a true king. Stay with us to the end, because this is the moment you stop reacting and start ruling your life with intention. What does it mean to be the king of your own life? Not the kind of king who sits on a throne, barking orders and chasing glory, but the kind Carl Jung described, a figure of inner power, purpose, and unshakable clarity. In Jung's psychology, the king archetype is one of the most potent forces in your psyche, a universal symbol of leadership, responsibility, and the ability to protect what matters most. It's not about dominating others, it's about mastering yourself. In this chapter, we're diving into the heart of the king archetype to uncover how it can transform the way you think, act, and live. By embracing this archetype, you'll learn to move through life with intention, not reaction, and claim the power that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you stand for. Imagine your life as a chessboard, just like we introduced earlier. Every decision, every challenge, every relationship is a move in the game. But here's the catch. Most of us play like pawns, reacting to every threat, scrambling to please others, or chasing wins that don't even matter to us. The king, in Carl Jung's view, doesn't play that way. The king doesn't need to move fast or far to be powerful. He's powerful because he knows his role, the center of the board, the one piece without which the game ends. That's you. Your power doesn't come from controlling everything around you. It comes from understanding what's worth protecting and standing firm in that truth. Let's make this real with a story. Meet David, a 38-year-old entrepreneur who built a successful startup from the ground up. To the outside world, David's a winner, big house, flashy car, packed schedule, but inside, he's exhausted. He's constantly chasing new deals, proving himself to investors, and worrying about what people think. Every day feels like a race to stay ahead, but he's not even sure what he's running toward. One night, after missing his daughter's school play for a critical meeting, David hits a breaking point. He feels empty, like he's playing someone else's game. That's when he discovers Carl Jung's king archetype, and it changes everything. In Carl Jung's framework, the king archetype represents the part of you that leads with purpose. It's the voice that says, "This is who I am, and this is what I stand for." It's not about being the loudest or the strongest, it's about clarity. The king knows his values, his boundaries, and his mission. For David, this meant realizing he'd been living for external validation, more money, more status, while neglecting what truly mattered: his family, his health, his sense of purpose. The king archetype taught him that real power isn't about having it all. It's about knowing what's non-negotiable and protecting it at all costs. So, what does the king archetype look like in action? It's the ability to say no when something doesn't align with your values. It's the courage to prioritize your mental peace over a promotion that would burn you out. It's the wisdom to step back and ask, "What am I fighting for?" instead of reacting to every demand. Carl Jung believed the king archetype is universal, rooted in the collective unconscious, showing up in myths, stories, and leaders across history. Think of wise rulers like King Arthur, or even modern figures who lead with integrity over ego. But this archetype isn't just for legends, it's in you, waiting to be activated. Let's break it down. The king archetype has 4 key qualities: authority, responsibility, protection, and clarity. Authority means owning your role as the center of your life, not waiting for permission to act. Responsibility means recognizing that your choices shape not just your life, but those around you. Protection means guarding your mental health, your values, and your purpose from external noise. And clarity, perhaps the most important, means knowing exactly what matters to you and letting that guide every move. Without these qualities, you're not a king, you're a pawn, pushed around by fear, comparison, or expectation. David's journey to embodying the king archetype started with a simple question: what am I defending? He realized he'd been defending his images, successful entrepreneur, person instead of his well-being or his family. Inspired by Carl Jung, he began journaling to get clear on his values. He wrote down what mattered most: being present for his daughter, staying healthy enough to enjoy life, and building a business that aligned with his passion, not just profit. This clarity gave him the courage to make bold moves, like turning down a lucrative but stressful deal and setting boundaries with clients who demanded too much. For the first time, David felt like he was in charge of the board, but of himself. Here's why this matters. In today's world, we're bombarded with distractions. Social media tells you to compare yourself to others. Work demands you sacrifice your time and energy. Society pushes you to define your worth by likes, followers, or bank accounts. But the king archetype cuts through that noise. It reminds you that your power lies in your ability to choose what matters and stand by it. When David started saying no to projects that drained him, he wasn't just protecting his time, he was claiming his authority as the king of his own life. That's the kind of power Carl Jung was talking about. Not loud, not flashy, but unshakable. So, how do you start tapping into your inner king? It begins with clarity. Take a moment to ask yourself, what are the 3 things in my life I'd fight to protect? Maybe it's your mental health, your relationships, or your sense of integrity. Write them down. For David, this exercise was a game changer. He realized he'd been sacrificing his daughter's happiness for meetings that didn't even matter in the long run. Another practical step: notice when you're reacting instead of choosing. The next time you feel pressured to say yes to something, a job, a favor, a social event, pause and ask, does this align with my purpose? If it doesn't, practice saying no. It's not selfish, it's strategic. Carl Jung also suggested reflecting on your role models. Think of someone you admire for their leadership, not because they're loud or dominant, but because they're grounded, purposeful, and authentic. What qualities do they have that you want to embody? For David, it was a mentor who ran a small but meaningful business, prioritizing family over fame. By studying that example, David began to see how he could lead his life with the same quiet strength. The king archetype isn't about being perfect. It's about being conscious. It's about knowing your limits, your values, and your purpose and protecting them fiercely. In a world that pulls you in 1,000 directions, the king stands still, not out of fear, but out of clarity. As we move to the next chapter, we'll explore what happens when you don't know you're the king and how that lack of awareness can trap you in a game you're destined to lose. Stay with us, because this journey is about reclaiming your throne. What happens when you forget you're the king of your own life? You move like a pawn, reacting to every push and pull, chasing approval, dodging fears, and losing sight of what truly matters. Carl Jung's king archetype teaches us that true power comes from knowing who you are and what you're defending. But when you don't, you're playing a game you're destined to lose. In this chapter, we'll explore the cost of living without that awareness, how it traps you in cycles of stress, self-doubt, and emptiness, and what you can do to start reclaiming your throne. If you've ever felt like you're running on a treadmill, going nowhere fast, this is where you'll see why and how to step off. When you don't know you're the king, you let the world dictate your moves. You say yes to things that drain you, chase goals that don't fulfill you, and measure your worth by what others think. Carl Jung called this being ruled by the personae mask you wear to fit in, to look successful, to avoid judgment. The problem? That mask isn't you. It's a fragile shell that cracks under pressure, leaving you feeling lost, anxious, or like you're living someone else's life. Without the clarity of the king archetype, you're not leading your life, you're reacting to it, like a pawn pushed around by forces you don't understand. Let's bring this to life with a story. Meet Sophie, a 29-year-old office manager who's known for being the reliable one. She's the go-to person for her boss, her colleagues, even her friends, always saying yes to extra tasks, social plans, or favors. On the surface, Sophie seems to have it together. She's well liked, her work is praised, and her calendar is full. But inside, she's crumbling. She's exhausted, resentful, and feels like her life isn't her own. She can't remember the last time she did something just for herself. Sophie's not living as a king, she's living as a pawn, moving wherever others push her, all to maintain her good girl persona. Carl Jung would say Sophie's trapped because she doesn't know her own center. The king archetype is about standing firm in your values, but when you don't know what those values are, you let external pressures define you. For Sophie, it's the need to be liked. She says yes to her boss's last-minute requests because she fears disappointing him. She agrees to plans with friends, even when she's drained, because she doesn't want to seem selfish. Every yes is a move away from her true self, and every move leaves her more disconnected. The result? Burnout, resentment, and a nagging sense that something's missing. This lack of awareness doesn't just affect your schedule, it shapes your entire life. Carl Jung believed that when you're disconnected from the king archetype, you fall prey to what he called the collective unconscious, in its unintegrated form. You're swept up by societal expectations, cultural scripts, or the noise of modern life. Think social media comparisons, work hustle, or the pressure to always be on. Without the king's clarity, you mistake busyness for purpose, likes for validation, or money for meaning. You're playing a game where the rules were written by someone else, and no matter how many moves you make, you never feel like you're winning. Let's look at another example. Consider Tom, a 35-year-old graphic designer who's constantly chasing the next big project to prove he's made it. He scrolls through Instagram, comparing his portfolio to others, feeling like he's always one step behind. He takes on clients who don't respect his work, just to keep his name out there. But every new project leaves him more stressed and less fulfilled. Tom's not acting like a king, he's acting like a pawn, letting the world's definition of success dictate his moves. Carl Jung would say Tom's lost in his persona, the successful artist mask. And it's keeping him from asking the real question, what do I actually want? The cost of not knowing you're the king is steep. You burn out trying to please everyone. You sabotage your own goals because you're chasing someone else's. You feel empty, even when you win, because those wins don't align with your true self. Carl Jung warned that living this way, disconnected from your inner center, leads to a kind of psychic fragmentation. You become a collection of roles, employee, friend, partner, instead of a whole person. You react to life's challenges instead of choosing your path. And worst of all, you call it normal, or just how things are, when really, you're losing the game without even realizing you're playing. So, how do you start recognizing you're the king? It begins with one question: what am I defending? This isn't about your job, your image, or what others expect. It's about your core, the things that make you you. For Sophie, this question was a wake-up call. She sat down one evening and wrote out what she'd been sacrificing: her time, her hobbies, her mental health. She realized she'd been defending her reliable persona instead of her own well-being. That insight led her to make a small but powerful change. She started saying no to non-essential tasks at work. At first, it felt uncomfortable. She worried people would think she was slacking. But over time, she felt lighter, more in control, like she was finally playing her own game. Here's a practical step you can take today. Try a values audit. Grab a notebook and write down the 3 things you spend most of your time and energy on right now. Maybe it's work, socializing, or scrolling online. Then ask yourself, do these align with what I truly value? If you're not sure what your values are, think about moments when you felt most alive, most yourself. For Sophie, it was painting, a hobby she'd abandoned to keep up with others' demands. By carving out just 1 hour a week for painting, she began to reconnect with her inner king, the part of her that knew what mattered. Another tool is to notice when you're reacting instead of choosing. The next time you feel pressured to say yes to something, a favor, an overtime shift, a social obligation pause, ask, is this moving me closer to my purpose, or am I just trying to avoid conflict? Carl Jung believed that every reactive move is a step away from your throne. By pausing, you give yourself space to choose like a king, with intention. When Tom started doing this, He turned down a low-paying client who didn't value his work. It was scary, but it freed up time to pitch a project he was passionate about, and he landed it. The king archetype isn't about being untouchable. It's about being aware. It's about recognizing when you're playing someone else's game and choosing to stop. Sophie and Tom didn't transform their lives overnight, but they took the first step, asking what they were defending. That question is your compass, guiding you back to your center. In the next chapter, we'll dive deeper into how to protect that center, your mental health, your values, your purpose from the chaos of the world. Stay with us, because this is where you start building your inner kingdom. If you're the king of your own life, what's the one thing you absolutely must protect? It's not your job, your status, or even your relationships. It's your center, your mental health, your emotional balance, your core values, the essence of who you are. Carl Jung's king archetype teaches us that true power isn't about controlling the world around you. It's about guarding the inner kingdom that keeps you grounded. When you let that center slip, when you sacrifice your peace for approval or your values for success, you're leaving your king exposed on the chessboard. In this chapter, we'll explore what it means to protect your center, why it's the foundation of living with purpose, and how to start doing it today in a world that's constantly trying to pull you off course. Your center is the heart of your inner kingdom. It's the place where your deepest truths live, the values that guide you, the peace that sustains you, the purpose that drives you. Carl Jung believed that without a strong center, you're at the mercy of external forces, society's expectations, other people's demands, or the endless noise of modern life. When you don't protect your center, you end up reacting to every crisis, saying yes to things that drain you, and chasing goals that don't align with who you are. The result? You feel scattered, overwhelmed, and disconnected, like a king who's abandoned his throne to fight battles that don't matter. Let's make this real with a story. Meet James, a 34-year-old freelance writer who prides himself on his work ethic. He takes on every project that comes his way, from low-paying gigs to clients who demand endless revisions. James tells himself he's building his reputation, but the truth is, he's exhausted. He's barely sleeping. His anxiety is through the roof, and he hasn't taken a day off in months. One day, after missing a family dinner because of a last-minute deadline, James snaps. He realizes he's been protecting his image as a hard worker instead of his mental health. That's when he turns to Carl Jung's ideas about the king archetype and learns the importance of guarding his center. Protecting your center means setting boundaries clear, intentional lines that keep your inner kingdom safe. For James, this meant saying no to clients who didn't respect his time and prioritizing projects that aligned with his passion for storytelling. It wasn't easy. He worried about losing income or disappointing people. But every time he set a boundary, he felt a little more in control, a little more like the king of his own life. Carl Jung would say James was reclaiming his authority not over others, but over himself. By protecting his center, he was choosing his mental health and purpose over the chaos of external demands. Why is this so hard? Because the world doesn't make it easy. Modern life is a constant barrage of distractions, endless notifications, pressure to hustle, expectations to be everything to everyone. Social media tells you to compare yourself to others. Your boss expects you to be available 24/7. Even your loved ones might unknowingly pull you away from your center with their needs. Carl Jung warned that when you don't protect your inner kingdom, you become a pawn in someone else's game, reacting to their rules instead of living by your own. The king archetype reminds you that your first responsibility is to yourself, to the values, peace, and purpose that make you whole. Let's look at another example. Maria, a 27-year-old nurse, loves her job, but feels drained by the emotional toll it takes. She gives everything to her patients, often staying late and skipping breaks. At home, she's too exhausted to connect with her family or pursue her hobby of photography. Maria's center, her emotional balance and creative spark, is suffering because she's been putting everyone else's needs above her own. Inspired by Carl Jung's teachings, Maria starts small. She blocks off one evening a week for photography, even if it's just taking pictures in her backyard. That small act of protecting her center helps her recharge, making her a better nurse and a happier person. So, how do you protect your center? It starts with knowing what it is. Take a moment to ask, what are the 3 things that keep me grounded? For some, it's time with loved ones, a creative outlet, or a spiritual practice. For others, it's solitude, exercise, or living by a core value like honesty. Once you know your center, the next step is setting boundaries to guard it. This might mean turning off your phone after 8 p.m. to protect your mental peace. It could mean saying no to a project that doesn't align with your values. Or it might mean carving out 15 minutes a day for something that feeds your soul, like journaling or meditating. Here's a practical exercise you can try today. The Boundary Builder. Grab a notebook and write down one area of your life where you feel overstretched. Maybe it's work, family obligations, or social pressures. Then, list 3 things you're sacrificing in that area: time, energy, joy. Next, write one boundary you can set to protect your center. For James, it was refusing new projects unless they paid a fair rate and respected his time. For Maria, it was committing to 1 photography session a week, no matter how busy her schedule. These boundaries don't have to be huge, they just have to be intentional. Carl Jung also emphasized the importance of filtering what enters your mind. Your center is like fertile soil. What you plant there grows. If you're constantly consuming negativity, whether it's toxic news, social media comparisons, or self-critical thoughts, you're poisoning your inner kingdom. Try this. For one day, notice what you're letting into your mind. Are you scrolling through posts that make you feel inadequate? Are you dwelling on a co-worker's criticism? The King Archetype asks you to be selective, to choose what nourishes you and reject what doesn't. When Maria stopped checking work emails at night, she found she had more energy for her photography and her heart felt fuller. Protecting your center isn't selfish, it's strategic. It's the difference between a king who stands firm and a pawn who's swept away. Carl Jung believed that when you guard your mental health, emotional balance, and values, you're not just surviving, you're thriving. You're building an inner kingdom that can withstand any storm. For James, setting boundaries meant he could write with passion again, not just for a paycheck. For Maria, protecting her center brought back the joy she'd lost in her daily grind. The beauty of the King Archetype is that it empowers you to choose what matters. You don't have to fight every battle or say yes to every request. You just have to know what's worth defending. In the next chapter, we'll explore the weapon that makes this possible: clarity. Stay with us, because clarity is what turns a scattered pawn into a powerful king. What's the one weapon that makes a king untouchable? It's not strength, wealth, or influence, it's clarity. In Carl Jung's psychology, the King Archetype thrives on knowing exactly who you are, what you value, and what you're willing to defend. Clarity is the blade that cuts through the noise of modern life, social media comparisons, societal pressures, or the inner doubts that whisper, you're not enough. When you have clarity, you stop reacting to the world's chaos and start choosing your path with purpose. In this chapter, we'll explore why clarity is the ultimate weapon of the King Archetype, how it frees you from manipulation, and how you can cultivate it to live with unshakable intention. Clarity isn't just about knowing what you want, it's about understanding what you won't sacrifice. It's the ability to see through the fog of expectations, distractions, and fears to focus on what truly matters. Carl Jung believed that without clarity, you're vulnerable to the collective unconscious in its unintegrated form, those societal scripts that tell you to chase status, approval, or perfection. When you lack clarity, you're like a king who's lost his compass, wandering the chessboard, swayed by every external voice. But with clarity, you become unmanipulable. No one can push you into moves that don't serve your purpose, because you know exactly what you're playing for. Let's ground this with a story. Meet Anna, a 24-year-old college student who felt like she was drowning in comparison. She spent hours scrolling through social media, envying her peers' internships, travels, and picture-perfect lives. Every post made her feel like she was falling behind, so she pushed herself to take on more classes, more extracurriculars, more hustle. But the harder she tried, the more lost she felt. Anna wasn't living with purpose. She was reacting to what she thought she should be. Then, inspired by Carl Jung's ideas, she started asking herself, what do I actually want? That question sparked a journey toward clarity. and it changed the way she played the game of life. For Anna, clarity meant getting honest about her values. She realized she'd been chasing a version of success defined by others' prestigious degrees, viral posts, a packed resume. But when she sat down to reflect, she discovered that what mattered most to her was creativity and connection. She loved writing poetry and spending time with her close friends, but she'd sidelined those for productivity. With this clarity, Anna made a bold move. She dropped an extra course that was draining her and started a small poetry blog. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt right. For the first time, she felt like a king, choosing her moves with intention instead of reacting to the world's expectations. Why is clarity so powerful? Because it's the antidote to manipulation. In today's world, you're bombarded with messages telling you who you should be: buy this, achieve that, look this way. These messages prey on your insecurities, nudging you to move like a pawn instead of a king. Carl Jung warned that when you don't know your own values, you're easily swayed by the collective unconscious, those cultural norms that prioritize external validation over inner truth. Clarity flips the script. When you know what you stand for, no amount of likes, criticism, or pressure can pull you off your throne. Let's look at another example. Meet Ryan, a 40-year-old marketing manager who was constantly stressed by his company's demands. He worked late nights, took calls on weekends, and felt like he had to say yes to every request to prove his worth. But deep down, Ryan felt empty. His health was slipping, and he barely saw his kids. Inspired by Carl Jung's King archetype, Ryan started seeking clarity. He asked himself, "What's my purpose here?" He realized his core value wasn't climbing the corporate ladder, it was being a present father and living with integrity. With that clarity, he set a boundary. No work calls after 6 p.m. His boss wasn't thrilled, but Ryan stood firm. That single act of clarity made him feel powerful, not because he controlled others, but because he controlled his own choices. So, how do you cultivate clarity? It starts with self-reflection. Carl Jung believed that the path to clarity lies in confronting your inner world, your desires, fears, and values. One powerful tool is journaling. Try this exercise. The Clarity Compass. Write down 3 questions. What makes me feel alive? What am I sacrificing for others' approval? What would I do if no one was watching? Be brutally honest. For Anna, this exercise revealed her love for poetry and her resentment toward her overloaded schedule. For Ryan, it showed he was sacrificing family time for a job that didn't fulfill him. These answers are your compass, pointing you toward your true center. Another way to build clarity is to practice mindfulness. Carl Jung saw mindfulness as a way to quiet the noise of the collective unconscious and hear your own voice. This doesn't mean you need to meditate for hours. Just start with 5 minutes a day. Sit quietly, breathe, and ask, what's driving my choices right now? Fear or purpose? When Ryan tried this, he noticed how often fear of disappointing his boss or missing a promotion pushed him to overwork. By recognizing that, he could choose differently, aligning his actions with his values. Here's a practical step you can take today. The 1-hour rule. For 1 hour this week, do something that feels true to you, no matter how small. It could be writing, going for a walk, or having a real conversation with someone you love. The key is to choose it because it matters to you, not because it looks good to others. Anna used her hour to write a poem for her blog, and it reminded her who she was. Ryan used his to play soccer with his kids, reconnecting with his role as a father. These small acts of clarity are like sharpening your sword. They make you stronger, more focused, more unmanipulable. Clarity also means knowing your limits. Carl Jung emphasized that the King archetype isn't about being invincible. It's about being aware of your vulnerabilities and protecting them wisely. If you know comparison triggers you, limit your time on social media. If you know overwork drains you, set boundaries like Ryan did. Clarity isn't just about seeing what you want, it's about seeing what pulls you away from it and choosing to step back. The power of clarity is that it makes you free. Free from the need to prove yourself. Free from the pressure to be someone else's version of success. Free to live as the king of your own life, making choices that align with your purpose. Anna and Ryan didn't become perfect overnight, but clarity gave them the courage to choose their own paths. In the next chapter, we'll explore how the king archetype thrives in today's chaotic world and why embracing it is the key to living with meaning in an age of distraction. Stay with us, because this is where you learn to rule your life with unshakable purpose. In a world that's louder, faster, and more chaotic than ever, what does it mean to live as a king? Carl Jung's king archetype isn't about wielding power over others, it's about mastering yourself in an age of distraction, pressure, and disconnection. Today, we're bombarded with messages telling us to hustle harder, compare ourselves to curated lives, and measure our worth by external markers like wealth or followers. But the king archetype offers a different path, one of clarity, purpose, and inner strength. In this final chapter, we'll explore how to embody the king in the modern world, why it's the antidote to today's chaos, and how you can start living with meaning, even when everything around you feels like it's pulling you apart. Modern life is a battlefield for your attention. Social media algorithms keep you scrolling, work demands your energy 24/7, and societal pressures push you to be everything productive, likable, successful. It's easy to lose your center in this storm, to forget you're the king of your own life. Carl Jung warned that when we disconnect from our inner truth, we become pawns in the collective unconscious, swept up in cultural scripts that prioritize noise over meaning. The result? Anxiety, burnout, and a nagging sense that no matter how much you achieve, it's never enough. The king archetype cuts through this chaos, reminding you that true power lies in knowing what matters and standing firm, no matter what the world throws at you. Let's make this real with a story. Meet Liam, a 42-year-old manager at a tech company. Liam's life looks perfect on paper: a corner office, a six-figure salary, and a team that respects him. But he's miserable. He's constantly stressed about meeting KPIs, answering emails at midnight, and keeping up with industry trends. He feels like he's running a race with no finish line. One day, after a panic attack during a high-stakes meeting, Liam realizes he's been playing someone else's game. Inspired by Carl Jung's king archetype, he decides to reclaim his throne not by quitting his job, but by redefining what leadership means to him. For Liam, embodying the king meant shifting from chasing metrics to leading with purpose. He started focusing on what he could control, mentoring his team with empathy, setting boundaries to protect his mental health, and aligning his work with his core value of integrity. Instead of obsessing over quarterly reports, he asked himself, "How can I make a difference for my team?" This clarity transformed his leadership. His team noticed he wasn't just a boss anymore. He was a leader who inspired trust. Liam's story shows that being a king in the modern world isn't about dominating the board. It's about choosing moves that align with your purpose, even in a chaotic environment. Why is the king archetype so vital today? Because the modern world thrives on distraction. Social media feeds you a constant stream of comparison, making you feel like you're never enough. Work culture glorifies hustle, equating overwork with success. Even our relationships can pull us away from our center as we try to meet others' expectations. Carl Jung's king archetype is the antidote. It's a call to anchor yourself in what matters most. It's about saying no to the noise and yes to your values. It's about leading your life with the quiet strength of a king who knows his worth doesn't depend on external applause. Let's look at another example. Sarah, a 30-year-old teacher, felt overwhelmed by the demands of her job and personal life. She was grading papers late into the night, volunteering for extra school events, and trying to be the perfect friend and daughter. She felt like she was failing at everything. Inspired by Carl Jung, Sarah started practicing clarity by asking, "What's my role as the king of my life?" She realized her core value was connection not just with others but with herself. She began setting boundaries, like limiting work to school hours and reserving weekends for rest and hobbies. These changes didn't make her less effective. They made her more present, both for her students and herself. So, how do you embody the king in today's world? It starts with small, intentional choices. First, identify your core values. Ask yourself, What are the 3 things I want my life to stand for? Maybe it's creativity, family, or authenticity. Write them down and let them guide your decisions. For Liam, it was integrity and empathy. For Sarah, it was connection. Next, practice saying no to anything that pulls you away from those values. This might mean declining a project that doesn't align with your purpose or limiting time on social media to protect your mental peace. The king doesn't fight every battle, he chooses the ones that matter. Here's a practical step you can take today. The King's Audit. Take 10 minutes to reflect on your week. Write down 3 moments where you felt pulled off course. Maybe you said yes to something out of guilt or spent hours scrolling instead of resting. Then, write 1 action you can take to realign with your center. For Liam, it was scheduling a weekly no-work evening to spend with his family. For Sarah, it was setting a timer to stop grading papers by 8 p.m. These small acts of intention are how you build your inner kingdom, brick by brick. Carl Jung also emphasized the power of ritual to anchor your center. In a chaotic world, rituals ground you. This could be as simple as a morning walk, a 5-minute meditation, or a nightly journal entry where you reflect on your day. These rituals remind you who you are when the world tries to pull you away. Liam started a morning routine of writing down 1 thing he was grateful for. It kept him focused on purpose over pressure. Sarah began ending her day with 10 minutes of reading poetry, which reconnected her to her love for words. The king archetype thrives in the modern world because it's not about escaping chaos, it's about navigating it with clarity. In an age where everyone's shouting for your attention, the king is the one who stays calm, who knows what to ignore and what to embrace. This doesn't mean you'll never feel overwhelmed or doubt yourself. It means you'll have a compass, your values, your proposito guide you back to your throne. Liam and Sarah didn't eliminate the chaos of modern life, but they learned to move through it with intention, like true kings. As we wrap up this journey, the king archetype reminds us that you don't need to control the world to be powerful. You just need to control your choices. In the outro, we'll bring it all together with a final call to action to help you start living as the king of your life. Starting today, stay with us, because this is where you claim your inner throne and step into a life of purpose. You're not just a player in the game of life. You're the king, not because you're flawless or have all the answers, but because you hold the power to choose your purpose, protect your center, and live with unshakable clarity. Carl Jung's king archetype isn't a fairy tale. It's a call to wake up, to stop reacting to the world's noise, and start ruling your life with intention. Every moment you've spent with us in this video has been a step toward claiming your inner throne built on your values, your truth, your strength. The question is, are you ready to sit on it? This is your moment. That feeling of being lost, overwhelmed, or stuck. It's not a sign you're failing, it's a signal you're ready to step into your power. So, here's our challenge. Start today. Pick 1 thing you'll protect: your peace, your time, your purpose, and make 1 intentional move to guard it. Maybe it's saying no to a draining commitment. Maybe it's carving out 10 minutes for something that lights you up. Whatever it is, make it yours. That's how a king plays. If this video sparked something in you, we want to hear it. Drop a comment below and tell us, what's 1 thing you're ready to protect as the king of your life? Your story could inspire someone else to claim their throne. Subscribe to Young Psyche Hub, hit the bell, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it, because the world needs more kings who live with purpose. Let's keep building our inner kingdoms together. See you in the next video, where we'll dive even deeper into the psyche to unlock your true potential.